And we're very pleased to welcome back once again to Telile 24/7, the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso, joining us today from Dominion, Mike Kelloway. Mike, Happy New Year to you, and thank you for joining us again.
Happy New Year to you, Adam, and to your family and to your viewers.
And right back at you as well, to you and yours as well, too. So we wanted to do this interview as a look back and a look ahead for you. And I mean, obviously, it's almost cliche to say it, that 2020 wasn't the first full year in Parliament that you expected as a Member of Parliament. But it has been a busy one for you, and one in which you have joined two standing committees of the House of Commons and also been very involved in issues both locally and nationally. So when you look back at 2020, what are the key takeaways from you in terms of not only doing this job for the first time, but basically having to learn to redo it and learn to redo it again through the year?
Absolutely. And it's a great question. It's one that I've been asked. And my father, as we've talked about, I think in other broadcasts, Adam, was in charge of mine rescue for the DEFCO mines. And I'm pretty sure my father would have this saying, but I'm pretty sure he lifted it from somewhere else. But he often said to me, when with respect to going underground to save lives or sadly to recover people that may have perished in the mines, that crisis reveals character. And I think what we've seen in the past year is that crisis has indeed revealed character from government responses, both federal, provincial, and municipal, but also personal characteristics of leadership and community leadership as well. We've seen an unprecedented pandemic, something we haven't seen since 1918, 1919. And it was scary. And it had an impact on every facet of life, and it continues to do so. But I've seen the best of people. I've seen the best of people to make personal sacrifices in terms of not seeing loved ones. I've seen personal sacrifices of essential workers and I don't know if it's the redefinition of essential services, but understanding who essential service workers are. That's the person that works at the co-op. That's the person that works at a pharmacy. That's the person that drives the truck from point A to point B. The person that stocked the shelves at your grocery store. It's your nurse, your doctor, your police officer. It's your early childhood educator. There's so many essential service workers that we now have a profound respect for. And we've often go to movies to see the Avengers or to see the Justice League, to look at heroes and mythical characters, and we have them right here. And we have that drive, and we have that passion, and we have that sense of community. And in times of crisis in Cape Breton-Canso, whether you're in Arishat, or whether you're in Shettycamp, or whether you're in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia, or Canso, or Pomquet, we've seen communities come together, and we've seen so many great stories that have come together rather. Individuals who, there was one case of an individual in Glace Bay, a young man in high school who works the cash register at Sobeys, and there was a senior who didn't just have enough money to pay for his groceries. And, the person working the cash register, the high school student, just with no fanfare provided an extra $5, $10 to that individual to be able to purchase the goods that he needed. And we see so many of those examples throughout the riding. So what does me good, what gives me hope, there's a couple of things. One is thanking the constituents for being who they are, caring, loving people who step up in a time of need, and their patience. This is something that's rocked the lives of everybody in one form or fashion. So their ability to help each other, our ability to help each other, is absolutely essential. And then I look at some of the highlights for me, Adam. When we were just about to get into what we now know is the COVID pandemic, we talked a lot about how do we help those that can't access EI, your person that works in the gig economy, the person that owns the small or medium-sized business in rural Canada and rural parts of my riding, if not all parts of my riding. And we talked about how do we help fishers, and all the ideas that came from Cape Breton-Canso. We worked with hand in glove, my office, myself, and folks that I just mentioned, to put together some real tangible policy suggestions and recommendations, and one that I use as a benchmark of what our community can do. what our community can do when the naysayers are not winning the day, but the can-doers stand up and are accounted for, was around the Fishers Harvester grant and benefit. Much of what you see that has impacted fishers across from the north to the west to the east coast, much of that, Bill Morneau, the finance minister of the day, talked to me and talked to my office about the fact that it was a lot of what we put forward at their request, working directly with finance and my office and fisheries, that came to be. Now, they weren't Mike Kelloway ideas. They were Carla Sampson ideas, and Gord MacDonald, and Blair Martell, and Herb Nash, and Leonard LeBlanc, across the fishers across the riding, that we took the time, and 7 days a week, there was a period for about 2 to 3 months, no, closer to 3 months, that every day we met with the fishing associations, every day, even Sunday, to work on putting together a package that we thought would benefit. And it did. And the same could be said for CERB. Now, when we put together our policy suggestions, we talked about, we didn't label the acronym CERB, but we talked about those benefits that would help Canadians, because the Prime Minister has said this, and premiers across the country have said the same thing, is that government needs to have the back of Canadians in this time of need. If we don't, then when would be the perfect time to have the backs of Canadians? So I was really impressed with the quickness and the agility and the focus of getting programs out to assist people. I was also equally impressed with the ability of MPs to influence policy, and I was also equally impressed that constituents played such a major role in what we now call, the Canadian response to CERB. Now, did we get everything right? No. I think one of the hallmarks of leadership is humility. And I think that, we look at what we did and what we need to do better and what we need to do more of and what we need to do less of. But so proud, Adam, of my office and our ability to work with constituents, and so proud of the constituents that have reached out to me via Facebook and phone and cell phone and text and Instagram and Twitter to say, we want to be part of the solution. We know that it's a difficult time, but here's some ideas for you. And that gave me such fuel throughout the past 12 months or so. And there's more to do. Look, we're in January now, and January and February will be dark months with respect to COVID. It's often said that it's the darkest before the dawn, but I see light at the end of the tunnel. And the tunnel and the light in particular is around vaccines, and it's around the consistent practices of masks and social distancing and making those personal sacrifices. So many people have made personal sacrifices to keep our communities safe. And there's a leadership author, his name is Simon Sinek, and I was listening to his podcast recently. And he talked about how you can go to any bookstore online or physically now, and you could go to find any section on self-leadership and self-care. There's an abundance of books on it, which is important. But there are very few books on community leadership and looking at and protecting others. And I think what we've seen here is what we can do when we put our mind together with other like-minded individuals for a common purpose and a common goal and a common outcome. So 2020 was a phenomenal year in terms of unprecedented year of challenging times. But I think 2021 we'll see this gradual resurgence to norms, and perhaps even adding new norms to our social practices and economic practices.
Well, something that has become a new norm for the residents of Cape Breton-Canso is the concept of social distancing, of mask wearing, of washing hands, of very low capacity in everything from theaters to supermarkets to restaurants. And I want to ask you a bit about the resilience of your constituents, because we haven't seen a lot of cases in the eastern zone of Nova Scotia in terms of COVID-19. And we've seen quite a bit of a spike in the Halifax area that is finally starting to be whittled down after soaring in November and the early part of December. But I'm just curious, I mean, obviously there are all kinds of factors to this, including travel and travel related spreading of COVID-19. But why do you think it's worked so well in Cape Breton and in northeastern Nova Scotia, in your constituency, that residents are willing to do these measures and to make those sacrifices to be able to stop the spread of the disease?
To some degree, I think it's in our DNA as majority of rural communities to look after your neighbor, to look after your friend, to be your sister's keeper and your brother's keeper. I think some of that is in our DNA. Some of it is passed on from generation to generation, and it's also the power, quite frankly, of rural communities to have a working knowledge of people in your community and who they are and where they are in their own life, whether it's a senior in a seniors complex, whether it's someone living on their own with challenges and difficulties, and just knowing your neighbor well enough to have a common bond. And I think rural Canada, and in particular Cape Breton-Canso, has that. I know other MPs have often said, here goes Mike Kelloway talking about Cape Breton-Canso again, but there's a reason for it. I'm proud of the people of Cape Breton-Canso. I'm proud of what they've achieved and what they continue to achieve, because there is a fundamental crossroads in times like this, whether it is this pandemic, World War I, World War II, the Depression, and the last pandemic, a worldwide pandemic and the Spanish flu, is that you have two paths fundamentally. You have the selfish path and you have the selfless path. And it's not an easy choice, because you want to maintain the norms and you want to be able to live your life the way you did before early March of last year. So these are where personal sacrifices have come into play, but it tells you what's inherent, the importance of family, the importance of community. And I think we have that in rural Canada. And I think and in my riding and your riding, you know, for the most part who lives in your community, and you work with those individuals. How many stories did I see throughout the riding of individuals who, of their free time, said, you know what, I know you're not in Cape Breton, but I'm going to go to the window of the seniors complex and take a picture of your mother who's there and send it to you so you have it. That's amazing. Or I'm going to go to the window and zoom your mother through the window so you can see it in Fort Mac. These are the things we hold on and true, but they're only as good. The practices and the beliefs and the attitudes are only as good as the follow through. So when I hear, social distancing and masks are an infringement on individual liberty, for example, I look at that. I look at the collectivity, the collection of people, and how we need to look after each other more. And we do that in Cape Breton-Canso quite well. And quite frankly, we believe in things like science. We believe, when Dr. Strang or Dr. Tam says, here are the practices that you need to follow through on, we do that. Science matters. Community development and community compassion and community action matters. And we live it. And sometimes I think we don't think we do, but we do. And I think that's evidence of what we've done here. And also bear in mind that, the premiers of Atlantic Canada have played a fundamental role as well in terms of the Atlantic bubble. And I also think to, ensuring that vaccines are flowing out right now, and ensuring that the federal government stood up when it needed to stand up. 8 out of $10 spent on COVID is federal dollars that have found its way and will continue to find its way in provincial coffers, and whether it's the Safe Start initiative or other health related initiatives, or the CERB or the CEBA. This is a time for us to stand up, and it has been, and it continues to be, that government needs to stand up to protect the backs of Canadians, but Canadians have been standing up to protect the backs of Canadians.
You mentioned Dr. Strang and Dr. Teresa Tam a moment ago, and I want to ask you about your role on the Standing Committee for Health. and you were on the committees for health and justice over the past year. Those were two highlights of your first year as our MP. I wanted to ask, are you directly plugged into the conversations happening federally around COVID-19? Is there a direct line between your committee and the work of Dr. Tam and the Minister Patihadu? What can you tell me about how your role and how the committee's role in the health department plays into all that?
The COVID-19 response, government's response, is the focus of the health committee. So we bring in witnesses from across the country to gather intel on how things are going, what things need to be done. And part of the role of myself as an MP on the committee is to be able to ask questions, be able to provide insight through whether it is community, potential community solutions or ideas, and bring that forward too. So it's a chance where the experts provide an update and are there to answer questions of both government and opposition, but also for the community to provide its own solutions. And I've done that through the work on mental health. We brought several folks in from mental health nationally to talk about how mental health, it's called an echo pandemic within the existing pandemic, and we need to be prepared for it. So I played a lead role on that, but also just around government's response in terms of funding the provinces to be able to take COVID head on. And so I'm privileged and blessed to be on a committee that during COVID did not miss a beat. We were one of two committees that continue to meet from March right up until now, and really play a fundamental role in asking questions of government, asking updates with respect to government and its work with not just provincial governments, but also municipal governments, First Nations communities, and also working with groups like the World Health Organization and getting updates there as well. And again, I look back at it, Adam, at moments in time. I remember it was probably late February, and Dr. Tam came in to talk about COVID. And this was before COVID became the sole focus of Health Committee. And we had some great dialogue, and I was leaving the committee room and had a chat with her, just a brief chat. And I said, where do you think this is heading? And she said, this is the real deal. This is something that's going to probably in the short, medium, perhaps long term change the norms of Canadians and how we practice health, not just from a physician standpoint or a healthcare standpoint, but as community members. And she's been right so many times, and so is Dr. Strang. And it's not that they're superhuman; it's that they listen to science as science presents itself, and science can change and adapt and evolve. But it's given me an appreciation for individuals like Dr. Tam and Dr. Strang, but also the civil servants, municipally, provincially, federally, those essential workers that I talked about earlier, a brand new appreciation for how we handle everyday life. And when something enters the atmosphere that causes an abnormality to how we do things, how much more precious that is.
I had just one more question for you at this point, Mike, and it's a follow-up from the last time you and I did an interview for Telile 24/7. We devoted the whole interview to the situation facing the Mi'kmaq moderate livelihood fishery, particularly in Budladeck First Nation. Traps had been seized from the waters of St. Peter's Bay by the local DFO office in October. Since we spoke, more traps had been taken by DFO from the Budladeck fishery near the end of November. Do you have a sense right now of where those talks are going between Budladeck and the Federal Fisheries Minister, Bernadette Jordan? I know you're but one player in all of this, but what sense do you get about how this could move forward in 2021?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll be a better 2021 than a 2020. That's for sure. Look, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans continues to meet with industry and First Nations communities. I'm optimistic that at the end of the day, we'll find a framework by which to work from. And we have some time, January, February, and March, to point this ship in the right direction. One that recognizes a couple of things. One that recognizes the fact that nation-to-nation negotiation continues to happen. Number two, that conservation is critical. to any type of framework and any type of resolution that comes out of a framework. Number three, that it wasn't once but twice that moderate livelihood was reaffirmed in terms of First Nations communities. And also, too, that industry has a role to play. Industry has a role to play in terms of providing insight and recommendations around how do we work together. And I can tell you first and foremost, in our riding, the fishing associations, whether they be in St. Peter's Bay or on the west side of the island or northeastern Nova Scotia, have been exceptionally professional, want to be part of the solution. And I can tell you equally, the First Nations communities have been the same. So we need to get to a point that we have a framework by which to work from. And I'm confident that those conversations will provide us the pathway forward. But we will have to continue those discussions, and they continue, and they'll continue with the minister and those stakeholders. But bear in mind that myself, I've been an activist MP and continue to meet with those groups as well to try to bring people closer together, not further apart. And there are those that are out there, whether it is the moderate livelihood topic or the pandemic or the response to the pandemic, that want to divide as opposed to bringing people together. And we need to focus on those that have the common wish and the common goal to bring the collective together. And I think we have more folks than ever that want to do that.
Well, we'll certainly hope for the best in that regard. And on a much lighter note, Mike, as we wrap this up, we know that this is a busy day for you, and we want to thank you for giving us some time here this afternoon. And we want to thank you for giving us time over the first year of Telile 24/7. We're coming on the first anniversary of our new show. And you were the very first politician that we spoke to, and one of the very first two guests on our debut episode nearly a year ago. And this is the sixth time we've spoken over the course of that first year. So I personally and the folks at Telile want to thank you for making yourself available to us. And we look forward to a continued good relationship with you through 2021 and beyond. Thank you again.
Thank you, Adam. I'm a big fan of Telile and the ability to talk to you and to have great questions that impact the lives of people throughout the riding, and getting that out is exceptionally important. And I appreciate your efforts as well.
No trouble at all. Thanks again for making some time for us. Mike Kelloway is the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso. We've been speaking to him from one of his offices, this one in Dominion in the CBRM.